Oh, it's working. No way. All right. First YouTube live stream. So let me see if I can find it on my YouTube so I can let's see here. How do I find it on my YouTube? So this is my first YouTube live on Unlimited Source Beam. I have other YouTubes. I'm David Starr. And why I'm coming on here is here it this is going to be a part of my Akashic records going back into the past and discussing lost history. So for those who do not know me, I'm a channeler and I do a lot of one-to-one sessions. I've channeled a lot of courses with the Unlimited Source Being. Sorry to turn my ringer off. So the future lives on YouTube won't be this. I won't have such an intro like this, but this is a series that I am to discuss lost history that I found in consciousness through different connecting and one-to-one sessions and different past lives that I've done. And I want to explain what has been lost, because for everybody who has not been awake, the history books have been rewritten. Almost entirely history is incorrect, and it's meant to condition, control, manipulate, divide, and conquer, and program people to believe in things that didn't even happen, altered, inverted, flipped. All these different things had happened. So basically, what I'm coming on to do is try to bring more of the awareness of this to everybody, so that they can help activate memories. And when you activate memories, it activates. Vicky, come here. Sorry, I have a puppy. She is just getting a little bit. She's going to join me. This is my puppy, Vicky. She's about to knock over a bunch of lights I have in my studio. So she's going to join me on Stories of the Akashic today. All right, you can just sit here. It's all good. I want to go back and talk about like the first root race on Earth, because there's not a lot of any information out there. Somewhere on the Ascension Glossary, they talk about these energetic beings, but they don't divulge like really much about them. And I've seen them a few times in the Akashic records. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about them, so I'm going to cover like two eras basically. So the first root race and like the second root race, and these are so pre-Lumerian times, pre-human times, getting into the first. I'll get right into the first human on Earth, and the actual story of Eve. It should be called Eves. It was many women who all look the same, who ended up mating with different god beings, but we'll get into that. So the beginning of the first root race, these energetic beings, are pretty interesting. So they all had like these different levels of purity and these different expressions. And it was really interesting because, like, so if you can imagine like an orange ray, a blue ray, a white ray, a yellow ray, all these different rays of light that came down had these different expressions. And so they were all very particular in their psychology, their mind, their way of their personality. Each ray was very similar. It's kind of like astrology signs are very similar, and in their traits and their personality traits, and so was the rays. They had like a specific set of emotional states and experiences, understandings, points of view. So they all had their own point of view, and this is kind of like the fundamental of the creation of the human mind, is essentially. And so what happened was you get like an orange ray and then like a blue ray, and they would merge and they would become one for a bit. And when they became one, they understood the other's perspectives, the other's points of view. And so they learned this way, and they experienced the earth in the way that the others experienced it. And this was interesting thing about the different rays, was because they all experienced the earth in a very specific way. And when they would merge together, all of a sudden, everything would be different. They would see each other's points of view. They would see the earth. They would experience things that they didn't experience. So this went on for like an eternity of going through, merging with all the different rays, experience things. You'd get like 30 or 40 of them merging together and all these different points of view. And this is kind of giving birth to points of view on earth, in this consciousness of earth. And it's sort of where it gives birth to personality types. It was very, very fascinating to see that. They still exist, a very high level of vibration. It's not like they just went away. They went inside of earth. They're very deep inside of earth and still experiencing. They didn't like vanish or get extinct, although there was some things happening on the outside of the earth, actual like meteorological issues and things, because they did exist on the outside of the earth, but there was like issues where they had to go, even though their energy, they're still susceptible to energy blasts, which meteors can cause, and these different things like energy can split and other things. Like I never saw any of them die or anything like that, but I saw them. They had concerns about the changes on Earth, so they went inside of Earth, much like Lumerians did before they split up and the new kingdoms of Atlantis formed. So that was interesting to see that and to learn about that, because you don't get that anywhere. And then I'm going to cover the second root race, just because these are the first sort of like deities, if you will, on Earth. And they're also God beings, and we are made in their image. I should say not we, but humanity was created in their image. And but well before there was any humans created and experiencing here on Earth, these God beings experienced Earth first. And they came from a planet just beyond on the other side of the sun. I think it might be planet X. And it's quite fascinating. And this planet, and they're sort of like solar deities, that appear to be physical. They very much look, when I've seen them, look tribal in a way, but they illuminate. Well, they can illuminate at will, so they can completely turn and be golden light if they want to, and illuminate in that frequency. And when they were first experiencing Earth, they just were enjoying the land. They were enjoying the nature. They were enjoying running. They were enjoying connecting to all the places on the globe and just experiencing it. And they were doing a lot of energy work on the land and like blessing it basically. And they're very fascinating. There's a lot of people think, and some of it's true, that a lot of like the wildlife, like the whales and tigers, come from different like Syrian systems and Lemurian systems, from Sirius or Andromeda or whatever. And some of that's true. There has been some vegetation and the plants and animals that were brought from other planets. But the initial creation's not so. So these god deities, what they would do is they would fragment themselves and create fish. Like they would take just a little piece of their energy and turn a whole sea of fish. Like it was just fascinating of different kinds. And so when they do this, right, they in their core essence are, say, on the land, and they're experiencing with the other god beings, their connection on the land, but because this one fragmented themselves into let's just say 100,000 fish, and this 100,000 fish is swimming through the oceans, and what it is doing is it is experiencing like being the shark, being the fish, whatever it is, in awareness, because that is the energy of the deity that fragmented to create and to be the fish, and then of course populate the oceans. And it's sort of how the sea kingdoms became initially, was because of these god beings fragmenting themselves, and they did similar things to animals. It's kind of like the stories like where you hear Zeus and Athena and Hera, and how they would become animals and prove themselves. If you can turn into this, and I think that actually comes from the true story, which is the real god beings. Because you'll notice that in all religion that there's always like these lotus goddesses and the sun goddesses, and whether it is in the Buddhism or like Egyptian, Mayan, it's all the same, very similar deities, except for Mayans. Granted, they had a lot more deities. I think they had near 500 earth and then 500 star deities in that neighborhood there. So the Mayans were a little bit different, but if you look across general religion, these same stories appear. And so where there's smoke, there's fire. And from what I've seen in the Akashic and what these god beings can do, is and I still believe they are here to this day doing it. Like Horus came down one time and through my ceiling and introduced himself. I always knew he was a guy, but I never seen him in his energy with my two eyes before until this day. So I know he exists. He showed me how to do universal one, and this is like an ancient healing modality that's just amazing that you can find on unlimitedsourcebeing.com. It's free. You just gotta scroll down to the homepage, down the first page, it's there. So Horus taught me that one, and I've seen these different animals and insects and turn into energy in front of my eyes, or have this energy about them. I'm just going to give two quick examples of it. One time I was in England, and there was this bird flying in the air that had this big red light right in front of its head. But there was no flashlight or anything, and it was flying around. I'm just looking at the light. So then I tune in, and then boom, this big red energies, divine mother, like this female goddess energy, this essence, this vibration of this goddess, was experiencing being a bird and flying around, basically letting me know that, yeah, I know I'm here, I see you, and this is the true reality. I've had this white spider one time in my bathtub crawling up my wall, and I was like, and we don't have white spiders here, at least not in Winnipeg, where anywhere I've ever seen them, except for magically this one's all of a sudden crawling up while I'm having a shower, like of all the times for me to spot it, up my wall, and then it turns into a blue energy and starts flying around, which is like a master consciousness, right? So the true reality is when you come into this level of vibration, like these god beings, I've learned a lot about them. They have already what I call the God gene, is a completed DNA strand. And when they created the Eves, and in working with old Tara, actually, they created the Eves and working with the old Tara planet before it was destroyed, much before that. The human race is modeled after the queens of Tara. They are the Eves, and there was this, when I say modeled, their daughter had this perfect resilience and connection with the light and her aesthetics, and she was so admired. And basically, they create clones of her, copies of her, essentially, but like perfect god copies of back in that time in Otara, they lived as gods on the planet. There was no darkness, no separation from God at the time. And so the connection between the sun gods and the beings from Otara was a very old relationship. Otara was on a whole other universal harmonic frequency than we are now. Like they're a whole other vibration of reality. And not to get too much into it, because that will be like a whole other discussion. I just wanted to get into that these were beings that were God beings, some of the first beings that were from light that became physical, right? And so they came, and this creation of the Eves, they created hundreds and hundreds. There's well over 300 maybe Eves that all look the same, and these God beings, and they mated and across the planet, and they were having different children, these perfect beings. And it's not the same story as the Nephilim. That's a whole other timeline. Okay, so this is like the very beginning of humanity. So the Nephilim, or what people call the fallen ones, or the giants and the people, they were actually not fallen angels. They were just from another planet. They were from another planet of these giants that came to Earth. It's a totally different story. It's not what's in the Bible. That's just not true. But there are some of these beings that have come from other planets that have descended, that did indeed have relations with the humans, and so that's like a whole other thing, though. It's not the same timeline. So I'll eventually get into that throughout these Akashics, but I just don't want it to get confused, because some think that the gods had mated with women and that was the Nephilim. No, Nephilim came from another planet. A really tall giant people came to Earth. They did have relations with humanity later in the time periods, not the same as like second root race, which is the God beings. So two different things. Basically, it comes down to the perfect DNA. So this is what, and I'm going to close in probably about 10 minutes here, 5-10 minutes, and close it up here. But this is the whole purpose of the Earth. So the Earth was meant for the God beings, us, humanity, and perfect DNA, perfect God DNA, right? Later on, the Anunnaki later on, yeah, they came much, much later and started messing with their DNA. Totally different thing, not related. But the God beings had the perfect DNA. So the first Eves and the seeded races, they were God beings too, right? And all this amazing life on Earth and physicality was happening. It was like energy was giving birth. Energy was being physical and giving birth for the first time in perfect genes and the most beautiful people and places across the planet, in perfect ability that they would have, right? So it was quite fascinating. And when the separation occurred, then the plans of Earth changed for the short term, which is up until now. But initially, this was all meant to be God beings and enjoyed as like this beautiful paradise. This is what this was all created for, to be like heaven and be this paradise and completely abundant in our power. This is what we're evolving back into, but we had to deal with all this density. So when the separation from God happened, it was like this huge event across all systems, and the ones who detached was trying to destroy everything. So, and it was coming after all these planets, and they were able to work everything down and basically trap it into Earth, into this technology that held on to the density and release it. Like every 12,000 years, density comes shooting out and creates dark ages and stuff. And my opinion on this is now, so let me finish this train of so 12,000 years, for well over hundreds of thousands of years, maybe a million years. Density comes out, and it's consciousness out of this technology in the earth. It's a ancient alien technology that's holding the separation from God energy, right? And it spits it out. So it's not just what you think. It's not just like this reptilian and draconian and all that other stuff came in, and we got trapped in here as well. But the ages and the dark ages and the cycles of earth to this point in time have been to release this density that was separation from God energy, so that it would have a chance to rehabilitate consciously, because it's basically stuck in earth, and transform and reconnect to the light in this now timeline where we're doing the final shift, the final transformation of this density. And so that's why there was dark ages. That's why they would go into golden ages and then back into dark ages, because once they got to a level, and they would basically spit out, the technology would open up. And now we're in the level of where all the transmutations and the reconnections and the clearing of the consciousness has happened, which is like the final level, and the planet ascending and the consciousness ascending and all reattached to God. Because the whole purpose was not to leave. God doesn't look at like a reptilian, I shouldn't say God, but the light of the light does not look at like somebody who's a murderer as a bad person. They look at them as somebody who's still learning, and somebody who eventually is going to come back to God again and repent, if you want to say that, but it's more clear in the consciousness, healing the wounds of time. And until you go and kill somebody, you got serious karma. And if you do it in savage manner, you'll turn into a demon. That's just how it works. You can, and that's what's called descension. That's a whole other discussion. I want to kind of conclude today's on the God beings, and talk about this plan, because if this is why all the extraterrestrial races ended up coming on and started working with the genes of these perfect God beings, because of the plan for the ascension, which was in the end timeline, we would all come back now, and we would need the DNA. We would need the DNA to be activating within ourselves, to really activate our ancient knowledge, to activate our gifts and our abilities, and all of the star races were going to come and help in the final push of the Earth's ascension. This is why the perfect genes were tampered with to encompass all of the star races, and this is kind of what formed the 12 tribes. That people think it's just the 12 tribes of Atlantis, but in fact, it's of Lemuria. This was done well before Atlantis. Atlantis just carried the traditions, and each of these tribes represent star races. And so you will have like Assyrian, Arcturian, Palladian, all these different star races as a head of a tribe, if you will, that was working with DNA, Lyran, and doing the genetics so that we would come back now to reactivate it in this timeline, reactivate all of our high frequency, because there was limitations with the current human. It had to be kind of perfected so that it would all come together, as this is like a universal ascension. It's not just the earth ascending, so we're all ascending together and helping each other out. And so this was like the whole plan of coming back into unity in the end times that we're in right now. So that kind of covers the first and second of the first beings that I've seen on earth. And the first, which is pure energy, and the second that I've seen were these solar humanoid God beings, and their planet is illuminated of Christ consciousness. It is such a high vibration. It's so much different than Earth. Like, it has a lot of the same things, but it's like the light frequency of it. It's just fascinating. It's literally like pure Christ consciousness frequency of this planet that they come from, and they're pure love beings, and they're still assisting to this day. the solar deities. They're still assisting to this day. And it's why so many of us connect with Egypt, because we connected with the sun back in Egypt. And why so many of us in this lifetime love the sun. It's no coincidence that you get this amazing feeling from the sun, because within the sun, not only are there solar deities, but is origin source for this universe. And there is consciousness that is one, but yet it's separate in that it has all these different deities in it, all your teams of light. And then you're not limited to the sun teams of light, but there's so many teams of light within the sun, and they're literally working with your energy. And so the sun that is coming and hitting me is not the same sun that is hitting you. I know this sounds crazy, but it's like you have specific rays that you need for your timelines, for your life, from your teams. Maybe some of the rays are the same, that are like the generic that everybody needs, but you have teams within the sun that are specifically sending you out rays. So that's why it is amazing to connect with the sun, and why we love it so much, because it's literally the beings of light that love us, helping us through rays of light. And so absolutely amazing. So this is my first discussion on going into the Akashic records through consciousness. And I know at levels, this series will be very activating for people. And so I wanted to come on, and I intend to come on maybe like once a week, maybe, or every 2 weeks for sure, and go through another like points of history, some more stories, more different things that I've seen in the Akashic records, and because I want these lost history and consciousness remembered, retold, things that you just can't find anywhere unless you are diving into consciousness. So I hope you all enjoyed it. And I will try to get to the comments on the YouTube. And please, if you can, share this out, because I think that this will help out a lot of people to remember and to activate just by hearing a lot of these different stories from this series of coming into the Akashic records and finding and discussing about the lost history. So yeah, that will conclude for today. David Starr. Power to the heart, let there be light. Thank you so much for tuning in.